the rate is this much of what I do. This much of it, especially in private client money, is the efficiency of that transaction.
This is just an option that, as far as I know, doesn't exist at the moment here in the Costa del Sol, which is let's go beyond the widget.
I'm Dave Huggett. I'm from Lucid Financial Markets, a foreign exchange consultancy which exists to help high net worth individuals with high value overseas transactions. So moving one currency to another all around the world, with a focus on high touch, high service.
And just tell me a little bit about your background, because there's relevance here, I think, for the real estate market.
Sure. So I spent the majority of my career in both FX and previous to that real estate. So I spent 2000 to 2010 in prime central London real estate. And then in just after the credit crunch, I moved out of real estate and went to a grad scheme in the city working in corporate FX. So my FX career was 12 years in structured products and derivatives, sort of, again, high ticket, large cap corporate companies that are moving money around the world, either repatriating revenue or for acquisition of stock, whatever it may be, but typically very high value. So like 5 to 100 million a year. And
Right.
my job was to help them with strategy around protecting from P&L erosion from moving markets. And that was done using spot, futures, forwards, and, like I say, structured products, so options, which allow various different scenarios and different outcomes.
And just tell me a bit about your company then.
So my company, I started in just after 2020, just into 2022. So during COVID, my career, I was meant to be going to Madrid to open an office or had opened an office for the business I was working for at the time. And I was meant to be moving down there full time. COVID put a massive stop on that, just because the whole market in that region completely closed. And the business, I mean, they quite honestly didn't want to invest in that project. So that stopped. I left. It was time for me to go. And I went and did some consultancy work for some other brokers for a while, and then I just thought, like, I'm kind of utilizing all my own network and my experience for the benefit of someone else. So I started Lucid, basically with a focus on corporate businesses, but also the thing I really love, which is the private client business. Private clients are not something I'd put a lot of focus on until I started this business, and it's really drawing on all my experience of real estate. So working in Kensington and Chelsea for a very long time, and then in the real estate sector, and then kind of marrying that with my experience in financial markets and FX to help people that are moving significant sums of money to move with that transaction. And the reason being is that throughout my FX career, I was often approached with people saying, I've got a client from my real estate network, I've got a client buying in London or wherever it may be, 3, 4 million, 5 million, whatever. They've got to move money from the US, or can you help them? I was like, well, no, it's not really something I can do. It's not my space. I'm in corporate business. And it kept coming back. And I thought, you know what, that's clearly a really underserved part of the market. FX is one of those products that, in my opinion, where there's a sort of assumption that you either go to an app, you go to a bank, and you just accept what you're given. And that's kind of my crusade. It shouldn't be that way. The sums of money that some individuals are moving are akin to what a corporate would move. And the corporate often gets a lot of care and attention. But the private client, I don't think, is often very well served. The bank will provide a very poor service at a very high price. Brokers are very transaction, very KPI driven, and apps they don't perform when it comes to large or high value. They carry the same compliance constraints that we all do, but they're no good at managing them. So the process is very, very clunky, very frustrating, and it can make situations very, very stressful, should I say?
For a company that deals in this space, you're pretty straight. We've had previous conversations, and you're
Yeah.
pretty straight talking. If something's good, is good. If something's bad, is bad. And just tell me a little bit about your view on the degree
Yeah.
of.
I think, do you know what it is? That's just kind of comes from the fact that I think it is quite a fluffy industry. I think there's a lot of selling. There's a lot of it's a very sales heavy industry, where the major flaw in this industry is that the guys that are in it, and bear in mind, I did this for a very long time, and I was in this world, are the way they're remunerated means that they are driven to drive flow. And that's kind of it. And that's kind of not really a criticism. It's just, in my opinion, a flaw in a business model. Whereas my approach is, if you're moving 1, 3, 5, 10, 15 million sterling, euros, dollars, whatever it may be, that's a really, that needs to be taken really seriously. And I think it's too transactional. And I also think it's too, FX is a very spread driven thing. It's like, it's a bit like real estate. There's tons of agents that will sell your house for less, whatever. And we all know that doesn't work. It's a flawed model, driving price as low as possible, which just means that ultimately the client loses, because if they get caught up in that, or that guy will do it for less or whatever, they're just going to get a terrible experience, or very likely to get a bad experience. And I just think that the way compliance is these days is very, very strict. There's a lot of paperwork required, and there's a lot of friction when moving money around the world, which can be easily avoided if you know where that friction lies. And I don't think the industry is very good at providing that solution. I think it's very good at, just like I say, driving flow at a spread. That's it. I take a view that I would rather have 10 clients than that I can serve really, really, really well, and yeah, arguably at a higher spread, than 100 that I'm kind of, that's just chaos. I think
Right.
I figured this out the other day, and it's very obvious, but if you go to any business in any industry and you're talking to a provider or a product, whatever it may be, that is willing to trade at less and less revenue, essentially, well, if you've got to consider how many clients they need to be able to make that revenue work for them, and it's a lot. Therefore, they are just fraught with problems always, because they're just chasing prices to race to the bottom. You know what I mean? Whereas
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to say to any client, like, I'm not your guy. I'm not like I've a huge amount of experience in both real estate and FX, financial markets, and I kind of not charge is the wrong word, but I position myself accordingly. And it's cool if that's not what you're looking for. It's not for everyone, but for the people that it is for, I think the value is huge. And that's not me, shining my own halo. It's just I've just done this for a very, very long time, and I'm good at it. That's where that fits in.
You've been, I mean, you're kind of new on the scene in the Costa del Sol, where I'm based,
Mhm.
but you're not new on the scene in Spain, because you've been doing some work in Mallorca. Tell me a little bit about
Correct.
that.
Yeah. And that was, again, the reason for that was simply, been on holiday there for a very long time, know the island really well, love it. And now I've been doing business there for a couple of years. And, I think what I figured out being a small business, a consultancy, I was like, I'm not going to throw loads of money at marketing, because I can't compete with the Currencies Direct and the money corps of this world. And I don't want to compete with them, because we're different businesses. We won't provide the same products. I'm not a remitter, I'm a consultant. And so I've spent the last couple of years building a network there, building some amazing contacts. I've got some amazing contacts. Actually, I know you through my contacts there. And that's 2 years in. I feel like it's starting to come online. Like, I've done a lot of business and I've got some really great clients there. But I wanted to focus on specific markets. If I try and take the whole of mainland Spain on, I mean, it's just David and Goliath stuff, right? It's hopeless. And so what I'm looking for is that specific client. I'm not particularly useful to lower value transactions, because you don't need me for that. You can do, a money corporate currency director, or an app, whatever, will perform well. They'll do a good job. You can send smaller amounts. But when it comes to the larger amounts, I've got to look at where those larger amounts are moving to. And that's why Majorca was a great place to start. And I feel like I've got a really good presence there now. But obviously, growth is growth, and we want to grow our businesses. And it makes sense, having been to Ibiza as well, and through the conversations I've had in Mallorca, to start looking at Malaga and the higher end market there, because there's obviously, as you don't need to say, there's a huge amount of money moving there internationally from all around the world, and it's a super exciting market. And again, I think, like I found in Mallorca, FX is an ugly beast people don't want to refer into, because it's a bit low bar and a bit sleazy and a bit pushy. And I think that people don't really want to push their clients that way. So my job now is, in the next 24 months, is to try and make my presence in that market as well. And I just look, I just want to be the guy that you go to when you need to move a significant amount of money internationally, and to get a, I've built, I've got a really good trust pilot now. I've got a really good presence online. So I think now I'm able to go. You can, I've got, there's visibility on me and there's social proof that can, which I didn't have 2 years ago when I went to Majorca. It was very much just, I've been to Majorca 20 times in the last 2 years, and it's that's now what I'm going to start to try and do in Malaga as well. But it's quite an easy, for me, where I live in the south of the UK, it's quite an easy route. Majorca, Malaga, home, whatever. It's no hardship, but it's it's a market I'm super keen on.
So how does that relationship with agents in Mallorca work in practice? Just talk to me as if I didn't know what I'm talking about, which I
No, it's a
don't,
great
so it'll be
question.
easy.
This is a great question. And actually, this, in my opinion, applies to any industry looking for referred work. And it's really that you've got to find the partners that believe in what you do, and that understand it, and that see the value. There's always fee sharing and things like that involved, but it's never why anyone does it. People don't refer work for money. They do it because they know their client is in really safe hands. And that's the bit that takes the time. You've got to, it's a huge thing to go and ask somebody for their clients or access to their clients. And I take that massively seriously because, I get asked for my clients, and I now have a network of partners in other industries and services, etc., that I now have really good trusted partners in, and I look for ways to refer them. So I think what I'm always looking for is partners that will always look to refer the work because they know the client will come out better for it. But that just takes time, and I can sit here and tell everyone how great I am and experience and whatever. But the reality is that's what I've got to prove myself to the partner before the client, obviously, and I'm always front of mind with my agents, lawyers, whoever it may be. They know that when they pass the work to me or the client to me, that client is going to get the best service that is available and the best advice and information.
It's interesting because in the Costa, I saw over the years that I've worked here, FX is something that doesn't really get talked about in the marketplace.
No.
And the only real visibility I get, again, I'm not an agent, so maybe this is happening without me seeing it, but
Oh,
visibly, all I ever see to do with FX companies are widgets, newsletters and widgets. Sort of
correct.
like stick this widget in the footer of your website, and then people
Yeah,
could just, and it's kind of like a handoff of for
totally.
commission. And what I've also witnessed is that any of the agencies in the high end, and by high end Marbella is a bit flexible because really you could say millions low end, with the prices the way they are.
Correct.
But
Yeah, yeah. Where's that now? Yeah.
let's call it the Marbella sort of high end industry. You never see one of these widgets on their website or
No,
page given to an FX company or a newsletter sent solus to do with
no.
Smart or whoever, and so it's not very visible. And
No.
I don't really, maybe you could answer this question, but is it that they don't refer them, or is it they just don't want to get involved in that because they don't really want to hand off a high net worth individual they've been working with discreetly for a period of 6 months
Hmm.
to a widget? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's is a massive question. I think it's a lazy industry, right? It's a really lazy industry that on the corporate side is just get a bunch of guys, make 1,000 phone calls a week, and eventually run into some business. And on the private side, it's like, right, how many widgets can we get on how many websites? How many pay per click or SEO um, pounds can we spend to get work? And actually that works in the volume space, and the volume space is smaller ticket, moving money around the world. That's fine, that suits. I think at the higher end, it's my observation, I think, is people don't want to get involved. It's and it's a shame because the client will doesn't know what they don't know. So they'll go, well, I'll use my private bank. And it's like more often than not, they don't do a great job. They're not the individual they may speak to, which will never be the same person twice, but the individual they'll deal with won't be expert in FX or expert in financial markets per se. They'll be working on a treasury desk or in a client relationship department, whatever. And it doesn't, that to me doesn't, that's wrong. Like if someone's going to move $5 million, pounds, whatever, you need that experience, that market experience, because the common denominator with FX is people are always win-lose. They always look at it a bit. Their frontal lobe, whatever, goes straight to the kind of casino aspect of FX, and that's where believe I do a really good job, is help people rationalize markets. But I think to answer the question as why it's not referred is I think it's just a bit of an ugly beast that people just don't want to get involved in. And I also don't think that I don't think people have necessarily have a credible partner to refer to. And that's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be the high-end agent in FX. It's to be that super. It's like you can look at the same thing with mortgages, right?
Exactly. I was thinking the
What?
same thing.
There's a million providers, right? Why does one guy position himself as higher end or whatever? Why does certain mortgage brokers get the bigger ticket mortgages? Because they focus on it and they don't. I think it's because they've spent a long time building that reputation, building that brand, and position themselves as if you want a £2 million mortgage, you go to these guys, and they take their time and they're very considered about how they approach their partners. And I guess that's my best answer for that really. But I think in the main, it's just people just don't want to get involved, and it's a shame because I think that means the client very much more often than not loses because they end up in the wrong hands.
So does the agent take a little bit of a view as in that's nothing to do with me? I've done this, I'm
I
doing the real
think,
estate part. The lady that's buying a house from New York, they're buying a house here. They're doing
yeah,
5 million. They've got their own banking people. They got their own thing. That's really not an area I want to get into or even should get into. And
I
certain,
think it is that.
and the
Yeah,
option until now, until you showed up, is that how am I going to convince this top New York banker to fill out a form on the footer of my website to
correct.
get
Yeah,
a quote? It's just embarrassing, so you
for
just wouldn't do
sure.
it,
Because
right?
and again, because that feels that to me doesn't match the client. These clients at this level want to be, they need to be served. They don't have time to go onto a website and fill in if I was going to move $5 million or whatever, I'm just not going to go onto a website and put my details. Like you're going to want to speak to a human. You're going to want to be able to have contact with that human 7 days a week, like round the clock. And that's the service I provide. Like I speak to my clients regularly over the weekends, in the evenings. I mean, I'm talking to clients from 6 a.m. till midnight because of the global nature of my business. And that's fine. And clients often say, "Oh, I don't want to bother you." I'm like, that's why I created this business is so that people have access to real time support. And it's, if in the main, if you go to the market and you send large amounts of money internationally, if you don't have the understanding of how the process works, you can end up in, sanction queues and money's getting held, and it just adds so much. I mean, I've had clients that have come to me who have missed completion because the monies have been held by a broker or bank for checking, and they can't converse with them. They can't communicate because it's either a big broker or bank, and they can't. They're either on hold with the bank for 2 hours, and and the whole thing becomes hugely stressful. And that's the problem I solve. It's always about what problem I solve, right? And the problem is removing friction and also providing guidance to a market entry. And that just doesn't exist. The industry doesn't provide that. The industry provides a very transactional, very conveyor belt process, and and the industry tries to take as much spread from that as they can. But and that can be driven down by the client. And it's just to me, it's just all wrong. It's just it
What's the
doesn't.
what's the most frustrating part you feel that from a from a customer point of view? Is it getting stuck in queues and things like that? I mean, what's the typical
Yeah, I
scenario?
think so. Like the compliance never gets less kind of frictional or clunky, and nor should it. Compliance is very important, right? It's there to keep, we're talking about significant amounts of money, and the money needs to be verified and checked and reason for trade and all that kind of stuff. But the biggest frustration, in my opinion, always is lack of service. It's not being able to speak to somebody real time. My clients speak to me, on WhatsApp, on they phone me, whatever it may be. I have my smartwatch. I can't escape my clients, but that's by design. That's because when wherever I am, a client has a problem or a question or something they need something from me, they'll get it within minutes. And even if that's to say I'm in a meeting and I can't, I'll get back to you ASAP. At least they're getting contact, and I think that's where financial services generally, especially in the banking system, um, doesn't perform very well. And look, I'm not sitting here like bashing banks. Far from it. We all need banks. Banks are they're the foundation of all business, right? But these are like enormous businesses that have about tens of thousands of employees that they're not able to provide a service on a consultancy basis. And I think most of the clients that come to me are just a bit war torn. They're a bit kind of exhausted by a system that is just too clunky and doesn't work.
And so, on a practical basis, so I'm
Mm.
an agent and I'm dealing with several large transactions, buyers from the States, buyers from the UK, buyers from the Middle East. At what point does this come up in conversation, or should it?
That's a super good question. I love that question. And do you know what? There's a really easy answer. The sooner the better, because the market the markets don't stop moving. But financial markets aren't complicated. The financial services want you to think they are, because if you're confused, you're exploitable, right? I mean, bluntly. So I'm always of the view that the sooner I can start talking to somebody, the better, because I can then start providing them information and helping them understand why the market's moving, why it's doing what it's doing, and what the possibilities and limitations are. Because again, I have clients coming to me saying, sterling euro right now, I don't know what, let's say it's, I don't know, I don't even know what it is right now. It's like 118, whatever. They'll go, I'll buy something when the market's at 125. It's like my job is to explain to them why that's not possible, and why, and why. And the most important thing for me is, I won't trade for a client unless I'm certain they understand the trade and the reason for that trade at that point, because the industry is really good at telling you whatever you need to hear to get the deal done. And that to me that's just not on. That's not okay at all, because I tell my clients not to trade as much as I tell them to trade. I'm not driven by KPIs. And that's not me shining my own halo. I just don't think if I'm working to a KPI or a target, that doesn't benefit the client, because that's always going to drive the wrong behavior. So I think that by doing that, don't get me wrong, it's taken me longer to spin my business up, because I am willing to say, look, you don't need to do this now, do it in whatever it may be. But I think that's where the most value I add is, and that's the biggest comparison I have to the rest of my industry, is that I don't have that. I'm not chasing that target.
How important are good fit customers for you? I.e., do you turn customers down?
100%. And that's not me being, again, that's not a ego thing or anything like that. I will only work with clients that I can genuinely solve a problem for. So if I can't solve a problem, I'm more than happy to say, a Wise or an app or a bank or whatever will do a good job for you. Like, you don't need me for that. But equally, and it draws on the original question of sort of why come to my business? Why would a client come to my business? Most of the time, it's just for high touch. It's for service. It's because people are going, I've got to move a whole load of money in a market I don't understand, and it's very often a significant amount of their wealth generated from whatever it may be, often hard work, right? And I think they just want to know that's in safe hands.
I suppose there's a great degree of accountability. No, if they're dealing with you and you're the one doing it, then
Correct.
if it doesn't go right, it doesn't go the way it should, then
Exactly.
they know what they're talking to.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for any industry similar to mine that's sort of smaller and more consultative, whether it's real estate, legal, whatever it may be. And I think that
Mine is exactly that way.
correct.
I don't have a team of people doing it. It's me
No,
doing it. So if it's wrong, it's me you got to talk to.
and I think that's what I love about that is, these days there are a number of industries that now offer the ability for professionals to work independently, or in a smaller consultancy environment. And that shouldn't be viewed. That's a massive benefit in my opinion. I can't afford to do a bad job. I won't take on a client just for a pound note. It's not, and that's not me patting myself on the back. It's just, it doesn't suit my business model. My business model is very high touch, and so if I've got a client that's very, very sensitive on price, for example, I'm just not your guy, and that's fine. And I'm very transparent about that, because the industry isn't. The industry is kind of baffle the client into trading and then try and hide some spread somewhere. It just, I don't know. It's just that, and that's the bit I can't cope with, and I've got no problem going on the record and saying that's the thing I'm trying to change.
So if, let's say, an agent is dealing with a transaction right now,
Mhm.
what's the steps? Let's just be practical. I mean, just from my point of view, so I understand. Do they contact you? Do they put the customer in touch with you directly? Do they introduce you? How does it
Yeah, I
actually
mean,
work?
for sure. I mean, obviously, introduction is always the first step, and I think what I always love to make a really clear point of is, it all starts with a discovery call, and again, if I'll be the first person to tell a client if they're doing the right thing with how they're going to attempt to do it already. I'll be the first person to tell them that. But for the benefit of 10 minutes, on the phone or on a Teams call, whatever, I think that the like 9 out of 10 times that the client's like, okay, fair enough, yeah, I get that. I'd rather utilize my services or utilize a business like mine because it is because they just don't want the headache of going, I've got to go and, phone somebody, press one, press six, get through to eventually maybe get through to someone. And it's just, and I don't want to go onto an app and move 7 figures. It's they're just going, I want to send a WhatsApp and know it's done. And
It's, yeah.
that's the real difference. But again, like that, not every client needs that.
So would you define this then in very basic terms as posh effects?
Do you know what? I think
Was that too dirty?
no, I think that the ultimately the thing that's actually the least focus, which I think people are going to set out to take on a transaction like this. We'll start with the real estate, for example. Let's use real estate as the main topic here, and then FX becomes a bit of an afterthought. But what I think is really important is the rate is this much of what I do. This much of it, especially in private client money, is the efficiency of that transaction. So, for example, US money coming into Europe, that's really for the client. That's a really painful transaction. US banks are hopeless at banking, believe it or not. I mean, they're like us 20 years ago. And I have the ability to collect dollars, for example, in the US. So I can open an account for Alfredo. I can then collect Alfredo's dollars in New York, and then I can sweep them back to Europe, trade into euros, done. And that's super slick. That's a really big USP. And I think that's where I think that most people have the focus wrong. They're going, well, what's the best rate I'm going to get? It's like,
Right.
that's
It's actually
last.
making it a painless, smoother
Correct. It's
transaction.
going. What we've got to make sure first is, moving money out of any country to another country isn't straightforward. And I don't care what anyone says it isn't. There's 2 or 3 ways you can do it in each country to each jurisdiction. And if you don't know those, you end up sending them in the wrong way, or I'm not going to go into the weeds on that now, but having that knowledge is what makes the whole thing painless. It's like, do you know what it is? And my favorite analogy ever is, you don't insure your house hoping it's going to burn down. And I'm at my best when things are tricky and challenging and difficult, but equally I don't wish that upon my clients. I want it to be smooth. So in some respects you can go, well, if it's really smooth and really easy, why is my spread bigger? But it's like, it's smooth and easy because I'm not fraught with clients. I don't have hundreds of clients at the time. And I think that's on the industry that have driven this mindset of like, it's just about the rate. It's like, no. There
Right,
is
I understand
so much
that.
more to it
That's
than
great that you explained that, because I think to the uninformed, such as myself, just kind of what you associate it with is that you get a better rate with this company than that company. But really, what you're saying here is that in a transaction that's taken 6 months to a year to put together, a real estate transaction,
correct.
that is moving money from different jurisdictions. And at the moment, there's a lot of Americans buying, as
For
your
sure.
example. What is the least likely to disrupt this process and throw a spanner in the works? And that's where and also, how do I pass this on to my customer that I have been whining and dining and looking after like a
Exactly that.
concierge to some app that's
For
just gonna,
sure.
God knows what's gonna happen,
I
you
think
know?
from just drawing on my real estate days, it's like, you spend time and look, these deals aren't, like, I don't think anyone's flush with deals right now. Like it's tough out there, right? So when you get that deal in process, you're only as good as the worst guy involved in that transaction. And I just think, like, always, when I was an agent, I would make absolute certain, I'd almost insist on a particular lawyer, a particular mortgage broker. It's like, and I was very good at explaining to clients, like, don't fall into the trap of going for the guy that's going to charge you the least, because that's when the guy that's charging the least is having to face so many more clients, which means the quality of service you're going to receive is terrible. And again, when the problems arise, that's when you're going to
Yeah,
wish
that's
to God
right.
that you
I mean,
you
it's
probably got that.
interesting that you should say that. Sorry to interrupt. It's interesting you
Not
should
at
say
all.
that, because that is the common vein over the last few years of conversations with people in the high end.
Yeah,
Is really the assembly of a squad, if you like, an
exactly.
Avengers Assemble
Love
thing,
that.
like a lawyer that's not going to mess up my deal, that understands and will give the
100%.
service it needs, a mortgage broker that's going to take the time and facilitate a deal that could drag out for 6 months with between one thing and another and make it smooth. And it's basically going to represent me. I'm going to bring these people in that are not going to drop the level and reflect badly on me, and there's a lot of talk as in, use the right lawyer, the right mortgage broker, the right this, the right that. And this is just an option that, as far as I know, doesn't exist at the moment here on the Costa del Sol, which is, position. Let's go beyond the widget, I think is the term.
Love that. Beyond the widget. It's brilliant.
Any parting words then, Dave?
Not at all. No, not at all. It's been great to talk to you. I've followed you for a long time, so I feel really privileged to get onto this call and be involved in a conversation with you. So no, not at all. But I'm sure my details will be available. And look, I think the most important thing for me is I'm not a sales business. I'm not going to sell this to anyone. I'm not here to sell this to anyone. I'm here to provide my experience and my background and my expertise, and that's kind of all any of us have got, right? That's what I love to do. That's cool. So it's not a pushy sales thing. It's for sure. If I can help, I'd love to, and if I can't, then I'll be the first person to say I can't.
So in the meantime, if anybody would just want to chat to you, then they can just get in touch with you.
100%.
You are planning on coming down to the Costa del Sol regularly?
100%. I am. Yeah, I'm planning on coming either this month. We're in September now, right? Yeah, either this month or next month. But yeah, for sure, definitely gonna be spending some time down there and more regularly as well. It's such an easy place for me to go. I live half an hour from Gatwick, so it's super easy for me to get to, and I love to come and face clients and partners. I'd much rather spend time down there. But yeah, we'll be for sure. But my details, I'm sure, will be attached somewhere.
Okay, Dave. Well, thank you very much, and have an amazing Monday.
You too.
All right,
Take care.
Catch you later.